morning for you when you see this. Good afternoon, good evening, good between time. Love those hours like twilight, and then that moment. I've been enjoying very much the moment of when you get up and the sun's not quite up yet, but you're awake and aware, and you get to watch it come up. I know it's. I'm not talking about technically the sunrise. That moment before the sunrise, when it's not quite night anymore, but it's not daytime. It's not daylight yet either, but it's a little bit lighter than it was. Kind of a twilight moment of its own. And it feels like that's a lot of the energy today. Kind of a twilight moment, a Zen point moment. And it feels like the day is likely to be full of a lot of nostalgic energy. And it's funny because as I was kind of feeling for like what's the energy that seems like it's already been coming in and what am I feeling and stuff like that, I thought, it's definitely reset energy, and it's also redemption energy. The energy of both wanting to be redeemed, to redeem ourselves, and knowing that we can, which oftentimes it's when we don't feel we can be redeemed, when we don't feel we can change our minds or make new decisions or be welcomed back after making a big mess, that we don't allow ourselves to even try for redemption. It's funny though that it's a song came on when I started this. It's Good News by Mac Miller, and the title of it feels like it's very fitting because we're in this Aries energy, which is related to the Page of Wands very specifically, and usually when that is upright, it is heralding good news. It's usually small good news. It's the it's it's not it's immature, but not in a bad immature way, just in that it's usually not very detailed, or there's could be some improvements on it, but it's a small step. But for the person doing it, especially with Aries energy, it's kind of a big step too for them. Like, even especially if you're talking about somebody that has been really bad at communicating, and or who has a fair amount to redeem themselves for. Sometimes it's that first step that's the hardest. Once that gets started, the rest tends to become easier, but we often hold back from just that first step, and once we do it, it becomes easier to do the rest. 11:23 on the clock, 7, and 3:04 on that clock, 7. So I have been seeing a lot of sevens today. A lot of sevens, a lot of threes, and then 20, 21, and 22, which would be judgment, the world, and then the fool. And I'm loving because I'm loving. I am loving. I am love. Um, maybe that's an energy today. But being that today is April 1st, it is all about the fool. And I think that that's very significant, especially as like in my personal practices, I like to look at what the date is and think about the numerology in it, and I've been meaning to include that in these daily vibes videos and just hadn't done it yet. And I love the opportunity to do that now. And that feels like part of the energy of today. I don't know if it'll carry on tomorrow or not, likely will, but it feels like, oh, it's funny. It feels like the combination between a reset into, maybe not a combination. It feels like we're shifting timelines. And so this is kind of like the eye of the storm, to where we're making decisions in what feels like calmer moments after stormy moments that we've had. And likely looking at a fair number of situations that feel they've been broken, or maybe we intentionally broke them or unintentionally broke them, or whatever has happened, and deciding which direction do we want to go next. And recognizing, I love the song, was it Hurricane? You can dance in a hurricane only if you're standing in the eye. And it feels kind of like that energy of like, if you're standing in the middle of it, you're watching everything going on around you. You might be watching it pick up Dorothy's house and bicycle, which was Elphaba's bicycle and stuff, but you're not in the storm. And once the storm goes on, anyways, whether you're in it or inside it or outside of it, you get a reset when it's done. Like when the storm is genuinely over, you get a reset. And so it kind of feels like this energy of like looking at what storms have occurred, which ones are still occurring, which ones are over, and which ones that we choose to take on because we know on the other side of that storm is goodness, is rainbows, is rest and rejuvenation, is redemption, right? And it also feels like redemption very much fits in with the Dragon's Gate energy, and I think I'm going to do a bigger Dragon's Gate reading later because I think that it's officially starting today. And I'm loving that, especially all the 2021s and 22s. And especially when you pair it up with this year being 2021 and then numerology of today, it's 4-1, which is 5, the Hierophant. So if you, and it's funny if you think about it, if you take the Emperor and you add, like a math problem, you add the Fool, or well, you add the Magician. So an initiation, thoughtfulness, writing, manifestation, you add the Emperor plus the Magician, you get the Hierophant, right? See how that works? And then 2021, also 5, Hierophant. And that's when you can see like a significance in the date. 5 is significant. You might see a lot of fives today. You might see 55. You might see tens, things like that. And it's definitely a day of divine timing, divine intervention, divine inspiration, of delight in some form or another. And I don't know, I keep thinking about, I remember a time last year when I was really looking into the astrology and we were in what they were calling a great reset. I believe it was when we had, it was sun was Capricorn and the moon was Cancer and we were having a full moon eclipse. And they were saying it was a great reset. And it feels like that's very much the energy of today. And I'll look into it because it might actually be something coming up. I've been seeing a pattern of those words like reset, restart, recycle, things like that. And you might also start noticing if you've been doing your healing work and releasing control to spirit, like oftentimes it will show you the spiral cycles that go on around and how we tend, we don't usually just go from A to Z and then stop. Usually we go to A to Z and then we start back over at A. Sometimes we'll go backwards from Z into A and then go back the other way and then jump around to A, but either way, we typically go through cycles that they're not like the 360 doesn't end, the circle doesn't stop there, it goes up in some way, or sometimes it goes down because sometimes we need to go through those karmic cycles, and so we might drop down into like an even messier situation, but that helps us get up. So even if we go down once or twice, we come up 2 or 3 times from there. We might go back down a few times and come up a little more. And so what you might be noticing specifically today is kind of deja vu moments, um, which I've learned like it's not even really deja vu. There are some deja vu moments, like maybe you experience something you experienced in a past life because you don't recognize it in this life anywhere. But there are definitely deja vu type moments where you recognize something that already happened, maybe something in your separation or something before separation, or something to do with your own cycles, your own healing. It could be other people, could be you, but you're noticing stuff today that is like, oh, that's a recycle of energy that I saw before. Probably it's usually this time last year, whatever that was. And you can look back and see how that pattern has existed before then too. And that's when you can observe, oh, I can see the times when I've gone up in my healing journey and I've gone down. When I've dropped and gone into and gone into like subspace or dom space sort of thing. I don't have another word for it, but when you've come up in vibration and you've been in that zen point, there we go. So when you have zen points and when you have drops. And it definitely feels like most everybody is thinking about what kinds of adventures they could have. Not to the point of let's jump out and do it. It's kind of like if you had an image of the fool in the fool card, but you took it back to when the fool was still like in his house or his hut, and he's deciding what to pack in his little bag that's on the end of the stick. What do I want to put in here? He doesn't carry much because he doesn't need much. I would assume it's some food and water, but I don't know. A lot of times the symbology of it is actually of the scrotum, and it's considered that he's carrying seeds to life. So it could be that we're kind of getting back to those basics. And Spirit has likely helped provide us up to this point of getting us kind of back to square one. And it feels like whatever is going to come into your vibration today is going to help you either. If you're not already there, then it's helping you get there. And it's very much the energy of breaking old contracts, which can be contracts with yourself. Like maybe you vowed to always forever be loyal, especially to anyone you get into relationship with, and you didn't really think about it or define it, or you've been very codependent or things like that, and so then you end up in commitment with somebody that you've pledged to be loyal to no matter what, and then like the things that you discussed, if anything, about what a healthy or fulfilling relationship would look like in the beginning, and like let's say they don't uphold any of that, and that makes it really hard for you to uphold your commitment to be loyal, but you do it anyways because you made that commitment to yourself. And so even if it gets toxic or abusive or anything, you keep it. And this can be with friends, this can be lovers, this can be exes, this can be potential future people, this can be parents and siblings and things like that. And it's really hard for a lot of folks at first to get to that point of feeling enough self-love and showing themselves enough self-respect to say, I'm going to break this contract with myself, this old contract, because it was broken a long time ago, both by the other person's actions in basically being non-consensual, in like not doing what they said they would do, and or adding on things that you never agreed to, and then creating toxic dynamics, and also in yourself for allowing that to happen, for being, I don't know. I kind of feel this energy. There was some shadow work that I did a while back, and I still do it occasionally. Is when I want, when I know that I deserve an apology from somebody else, I give it to myself, and I apologize to myself for putting myself in the situation of interacting with somebody who did not find me worthy of said apology, or who found it acceptable for any reason to treat me in the way that was deserving of an apology. And it feels like that's definitely an energy that exists today, is, apologizing to ourselves for allowing our lives to become the ways that they have if it's not great. And even if your life is overall great, you've got a lot of wonderful things, there can still be some really profound areas of your life that have not panned out the way you thought that they would because of those old contracts. Because if you've been, if you've gone through a lot of traumas about, either being called disloyal or being extremely loyal when other people were disloyal, of being cowardly because you didn't want to face conflict or drama, or being unaccountable. Accountability is definitely a big overall energy, but I think I'm going to include that in general with the Dragon's Gate energy. Both, most especially how we're accountable to ourselves. It's showing up, it's manifesting in how we've not been accountable to others. But I think more than anything, when we're not accountable to ourselves, that's when we're not accountable to others. And it feels like on some timelines, you might be seeing, well, kind of how the ground looks after the storm has left, after the forest fires happened, after the flood has pulled back. And for others, it's that calm moment when you're recognizing that you need to allow the tower to fall, the phoenix moment to happen, the transformation to occur, where you're thinking about how you've accepted less than you deserve, and you've manifested situations that that hurt you far more than they help you. And one of the hardest things for us to do, especially if you genuinely have a sweetheart, is to uphold healthy boundaries in those calm moments, especially if you've been wrapped up with somebody that has been stuck in other dimensions and it has, is reactive, is quick to get their temper going if you uphold a healthy boundary. And so it's kind of one of those like, do you accept the minimals or less than minimum? Do you accept the disrespect and misbehavior because that person has on occasion done the right thing or said the right thing, or because that person has maybe made a very small attempt to right things, but you can tell that it's not really there. Sort of like some people, like their first apology is kind of a fuck you apology, to where it's like they don't really mean it, but they're tired of being faced with it, so they'll just say it to get it out of the way. And oftentimes those same people, if you hold your boundaries later, will give you a genuine apology. But it's it's one of those like you can recognize that somebody may be giving a small effort towards something, and sometimes, when you have somebody that hasn't done that a lot, yeah, it's good to recognize that sometimes it's hard to be genuine and emotional and vulnerable, especially if you've had a hard life. But if you've got somebody that has repeatedly done that, and you may, they could be family or somebody you deeply love, or even, let's say, an adult child, if you continue to allow them to just do the minimal stuff, then you end up in a dynamic where you are constantly fighting just to get the minimals. And in your sweetness, you may try to reward them for those little steps so that they keep going. And if they don't do that, then you got to decide, like, if you requested something or you upheld a boundary and they came towards you and only gave you like the barest bones of, like, I'm talking like not even a crumb of a breadcrumb or only some breadcrumbs, yeah, you can choose to accept that and reward them and do that. But one, then you're putting yourself on a pedestal, you're putting them on a pedestal, and you're very likely to continue another cycle of that. Is that what you want to do? If it's not, if you know that you deserve full effort, if you know that you are worthy of that, then show yourself the self respect and lovingly let them know that that's not acceptable. And then just trust to, give faith to spirit that if everything you see in said person that you believe is true about them, then they just need the space to learn their lessons, and they will come through, and they will come through and surprise you pleasantly in just how well they do. And that can break old contracts of cycles to where that sort of stuff just continues to happen again and again, because you are showing yourself and showing them something that likely neither one of you has really ever seen or been good at. And it's funny, it reminds me of a theme that was going on last year, especially. It was a Dumbledore quote of, it takes a great deal of effort to stand up to your enemies, and it takes a great deal more to stand up to your friends. And if you include in that, it takes a great deal more effort to stand up to your parents, to your loved ones, to your family, to people that you genuinely care about. And most especially to people, a lot of times we can end up in like trauma bonded dynamics because somebody who's been overall not great to us and has drug us down a lot, or that we've allowed to ourselves to be drugged down for because of them, they were there in clutch moments, or they treated us in a way that we did deserve to be treated in some really big moments when we really needed it. And so we want to give to them, we want to say, I understand, and I'm there for you. We want to reciprocate. But a lot of times we need to stop and step back and say, you know what? I'm going to say no to this dynamic. I'm going to let it go. And if it comes back in the proper way that is respectful to yourself and to themselves, really, then great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. It feels like that's a big energy today. Anyways, I'm going to pull a Rider Thwaite card if I'm kind of feeling called to get back to the basics, you know? Actually, we might pull a couple of cards and just kind of get a little more clarity on what's going on today. You know, it's funny, I had, just in that moment when I said that word clarity, I had a thought. Um, I work with, well, I get the pleasure of interacting with a spiritual group that works on intention work. That's funny, 11:41 on the clock, 7. And I tried to get my DM involved in it. I did get him involved in it, sort of, but he's always been delightfully and frustratingly shy about things. And we had set an intention to do one of these spiritual gatherings together that we did, we did the gatekeeping, we did all the work in the beginning, and then he backed out of going last minute, and we had a fight and things like that. But it's the kind of spiritual work that you don't just get to back out of it once you've done gatekeeping. You're in it whether you go to the ceremony or not. And his intention was for focus, and I realized at some point last year that what he really was asking for, because we don't often ask for what we actually want. We usually ask for something that helps us see what we want. He asked for focus, and what he really wanted was clarity. And it's funny because over the separation, most of his time has been filled with a whole lot of distractions because he asked for focus. And now it's getting down to the point to where it's mostly just him, and that's a lot of clarity. Well, it will be when he gets there. I don't know, I feel like that's probably part of today's energy specifically, is thinking about our priorities, our distractions, our intentions that we've set accidentally and on purpose, which reminds me, I had an intention to do some divine nuggets about that. Um, but, getting down to where it's just us when we have that peaceful space to genuinely think about what we have and what we want. Interesting. So the card that came up, the Five of Pentacles. And it's funny, that's not always my favorite card to see, but it feels like today, like if you the background of this card is a church. It's a place for spiritual gathering. How interesting, right? I was just talking about that. And the people in it are supposedly seeking refuge. They're seeking sanctuary. They're seeking healing. And it feels like that's that energy. Now, this card is also often about isolation, being left in the cold, things like that. And so that's funny. I'm really called to the snow in it, but it feels like it's more about, well, it feels like it's a lot about that redemption energy, but also the reset. Like, here's the card on the bottom, like a wish for a reset, for a do-over, for a new chance. And that's in our shadow work position, the Nine of Cups. So an emotional wish. And it's also single man energy. So um, whether you're male, female, or in another part, I was going to say another part of the binary, but that didn't make sense. Okay, if you're outside the binary, if you're outside the box, it's still, it's masculine energy in terms of getting single. Like maybe you did something, or you are about to do something that's going to help you get single to where you can focus. You can sit there and really review your cups and think about, what is that 10th cup? What is it? Where is it? What do you want in it? And how do you communicate it? How do you focus on it? Oh, this is funny. So, hot topic card, Four of Cups. So, we've got two cups energies already in our shadow work and in our, either in our regular conversations or in our thoughts. And it feels like this card I typically interpret differently, but today I'm feeling like intuitively we're looking at the cups that we have and recognizing that we turned away the cup that we wanted. And it actually, if you think about it, it's exceptionally fitting with the Nine of Cups. And adding them together, you get 13, which is transformative. It's death card energy, it's transformation, and it leads back to Emperor energy. So again, we see more Emperor energy, which makes sense because we're starting today on the fourth month of the year. And it feels like we may have had some moments that we were bratty about our emotions. We were immature. We didn't take opportunities for growth that we had, and now, like, it feels like, whereas he's looking at the Three of Cups, it actually feels like that is a mask. Like, he feels like he has to, or it doesn't have to be a he, but the figure in here is masculine looking. So it feels like the person is looking at the cups that they have more so to give the impression that that's what they're looking at, but they're actually, like, in their mind is this fourth cup up here, the one that they really want, the person they really want to give their cup to or really want to receive cups from. And it feels like they feel like they're forced to look at the Three Cups in some ways too. Like, maybe if this is you or someone you're thinking about today, they are thinking about how dissatisfied and bored they are with the life that they've created, and they feel kind of forced to look at the Three Cups. Maybe it is because you told them you don't want to talk to them anymore, or that way they've treated you is unacceptable, or maybe part of it is you and you're not looking at you're not looking at someone that you want to talk to, because even though you're not as satisfied with these Three Cups, you know that they will bring you more fulfillment than focusing on one hanging in the air that you know you would like to reach out and accept it, but it's always just a little out of reach. It feels mostly like the energy, though, of those who are looking at their current situation and feeling limited, like they can't talk to people about what's going on because of their own choices. It kind of feels like that energy of they had the opportunity to talk about it. They had the opportunity to be honest, to take that, to get help, to be real and genuine and vulnerable, but they didn't, and so now nobody wants to hear about it anymore. There's no sympathy. It's not in there, and it's kind of a card of loneliness in there, and so that's kind of the hot topic issue. And also because of that card, and well, and the Nine of Cups and the Five of Pentacles, it feels like single energy, um, which, has light and shadow in it. So singleness in terms of how we feel lonely, how we make ourselves feel lonely, and also the positive side of individuality, independence, things like that. It may be that either you or someone you're thinking about is doing the necessary shadow work, because this is in the shadow card position, to get single. And they're going through those emotions of thinking about it, how to walk away, how to stand on their own, how to get how to get the support, how to not walk back into a new crappier situation. This is in the heart of the matter. And I'm feeling called to say also that the Chariot card in reverse and the Ace of Swords oh wow, this is funny. Okay. Page of Wands reverse, the Chariot reverse, Ace of Swords reverse, Ace of Cups reverse, Five of Wands reverse, and the Four of Swords reversed, all sitting on top of the Hanged Man and the Tower in upright. I don't typically take that many cards for the heart of the matter, but what it feels like is that somebody got some bad news, likely had to do with children. I'm feeling called to something I talked about yesterday, that this feels like it feels like it feels like two things. It feels like blocked energy, like maybe you or someone else has children that they cannot talk to right now because of some immaturity that occurred. And then the other side, it feels like the news of, like, say, you're with someone and they said they were pregnant, and then you find out that it's not yours, or that, like, some story about a pregnancy in the past, you find out that it wasn't yours, or things like that. It feels like bad news about kids, and it has to do largely with immaturity and control games and things like that, and that's creating stress and what does Abraham call it? Like, if you think of a stream, what you want is downstream thoughts, because the stream flows down naturally, then you're going with the flow. But this feels like upstream thoughts, like trying to swim against the current. And it's because of lies and miscommunications, and feels like a lot of emotional, tearful energy, like a feels like the loss of a new beginning with both those aces there, because of a lack of a communication, a lack of honesty, a lack of transparency, and that created drama, and it knocked over. I mean, that's a mini tower card in its own way, and likely because of some narcissism. And but this card can also be the ending of, of, it's what I was going to say, of thoughtfulness. So maybe it's ending things with someone who's not being thoughtful, but it can also be like putting a stop to situations where you're continually exhausted by them. And having the hanged man in the tower right there tells me that likely it's because of some really hard situations that happened, and it brought clarity, but it also kind of put you or someone else into a situation where they felt stuck. And they saw that it's because they put themselves in the position to be stuck, and they can either learn from it and get the wisdom from the wishing well, or they can complain about being stuck. That's the thing about like this card is everything has to do with your perspective. You can look at a moment of contrast or a moment of rejection as like seeing that somebody else is really awful or bad, or you can look at it like a moment to see yourself, to be accountable, to be clearer, to make new choices, to have new beginnings, to, what's funny, the other bit of that energy, they're goggles. They're steampunk prism goggles. And hello to both of you. Um, it feels like the energy today of, I'm gonna leave this as the last bit of energy, is recognizing the moments when we have been abandoned, because of that five of pentacles can often be abandonment. Recognizing how we have self-sabotaged ourselves into being in that situation, and also really thinking about situations we should walk away from, and how we can do so faithfully, as in faith in ourselves, faith in spirit, and if it's a love situation, faith in someone we love, to be able to get help, to seek help. That's what it is. That card, a lot of times, it can have to do with getting help, like rehab or counseling or seeing a doctor or things like that, and really working out the stuff that keeps us in an energy of perpetual victimhood. All right, anyways, y'all, I have to drive back to the house and give my dad his car back, so I will get back on when I am there. I'm thinking to finally do my first live card pull reading, so if you'd like to be a part of that, then stick around and I'll see you in a little bit.